Welcome to Clarity in Action. This is the show where we have real conversations that are going to challenge your perspectives and drive real action. So if you are tired of holding back and you're ready to make bold moves, this is the show for you. Join us as we are going to take you from confusion into clarity. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Clarity in Action. I'm your host, Clara Capano. We talk a lot about the idea of abundance and scarcity being just a mindset. And you know what? It can be so much more than that. It really can be the catalyst to unlocking greatness and being able to take you to the next level and help you scale your business. And to help me with this, I have an expert in this area. So I have Carol Schultz. Carol, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here with you, Clara.
So talk to us about this scarcity thing. Why do you think so many people are coming from a mindset of scarcity, especially leaders? You know, you would think the world's their oyster. They're running their own business.
Well, I mean, listen, I empathize with this because that was me. Okay. So I learned through my own having that almost ruined my business. And I think so many of us become entrepreneurs and don't really realize what it's going to take to be successful. So often we're like, oh, I'll just bootstrap and, do everything. And what that often leads to is I have to do everything myself.
Yeah.
And that was me. I had to do everything myself. And my business literally suffered because of it. I was selling, I was delivering, I was doing marketing, I was working on my website. I was, grasping at straws for other people to help me in some other areas that I just had no clue about, trying to do my own SEO. I mean, give me a break.
But isn't that the way it kind of is in the beginning? I guess maybe the myth that I want to break down is I think people think that's how it has to be for your first couple of years. It has to be all you. You have to be wearing everything. And maybe what you're saying is it doesn't have to be that way for your first couple of years. And you can come out of the gate with a little bit more structure.
Yeah, well, and that's really what I am saying. So, and I'm not here to say don't do anything yourself, especially when you're starting out. What I'm here to say is if you're going to be an entrepreneur and you are unwilling to spend money on your business, you should not be in business.
Oh my God. Can you say that?
Unwilling or unable to do that. If you are unwilling or unable to spend money on your business, do not go into business and be an entrepreneur because it will literally squash you. It's what it virtually did for me. And because I'm like, oh, I don't want to spend money on that. Oh, I don't want to spend money on that. Oh, I can do that myself. No, you can't. It's just going to be shitty if you do it yourself.
So powerful and very simplistic. Again, I think, we're starting things out. We start on this shoestring budget. And like you said, oh, I'm not going to delegate this out. Oh, I'm not going to buy this. I'm going to do it all myself. And we don't understand there's a cost to that too. And we need to, I think, shift the mindset. And one of the things you and I were talking about off camera is, just like if I was going to go and open a deli, I would go and get a small business loan because you've got to have capital. So I don't think a lot of entrepreneurs understand that and they don't go into it with some capital to invest.
Or they're unwilling to spend their savings. I went through virtually my whole inheritance when I pivoted my business, when I finally thought, this is not working for me. I have got to, and I made a business pivot. I walked away from a very lucrative career as a professional headhunter. And I'm like, well, I hadn't done it sooner because I thought, well, I don't want to go broke. Right. And because that's what I had in the past. And I'm like, yeah, no, I have to do it the right way or else I'll never scale my business. Yeah. And the rest is history.
So how do we know what the right things are to invest money in?
So that is the $64,000 question, which with inflation is probably the several $1,000,000 question, right? So telling people that they need to spend money doesn't mean wildly spend money or don't consider what you're spending money on. But when you start, if you've been doing your own SEO, for example, just one example, go find an expert at that. Now, that's not always easy to do. I went through a few people first who were not that good because that's not my area of expertise. So I had trouble finding the right person. Finally, I did. But, when you are spending it's different for everybody, your $500 an hour time doing $25 an hour work, you better have a come to Jesus meeting with yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. And really think about, is this the way I should be spending my time?
Yeah. It's interesting that you bring this up and looking at, where you want to invest. And
Mhm.
sometimes it can be on the home front. I know for me, when I was starting my coaching business,
Yeah.
I didn't need a lot of technology. I didn't need
Right.
a lot of fancy things,
Mhm.
doing that. What I needed was to use my time and to
Mhm.
invest my time.
Mhm.
And I started with getting a house cleaner. And for those few hours, that freed me up to invest that time
Very
in
good.
growing my business. So I think sometimes we have to take a step back and understand it's not about buying this new tool or
Mhm.
technology.
Mhm.
Sometimes the investment is of your time and your energy.
Well, there's no that's that I mean, there's no question. Again, if you're doing your own house cleaning, what is that? What is the value of that, right? And I mean, I don't clean my own home for several reasons, but that's certainly one of them. Is
Mhm.
that I just, I could either take 4.5 or 5 hours to clean my house. What could I be doing with that 4.5 or 5 hours?
Yeah.
Plenty
So,
more.
talk to us more about the scarcity behind this and what are the stories that we tell ourselves more than I should just be doing this myself because I'm starting my business? Like, why do we get stuck in this? And then why is it so hard for us to get out of it? Because I experience where someone says, oh, as soon as I get to this level, then I'll invest there. Then they get to that level and it's like, oh, no, 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 I'll just do it myself because now I need even more money. And you never get off that hamster wheel.
That's right. Yeah. I think there are a number of different factors, and one of those is certainly fear. Well, what if I run out of money?
Mhm.
Right? And I will say, since the two of us are both women, this is most prevalent with women not wanting to spend money or not going out and getting a bit, like it's like not even in consideration going out to get a business loan. Well, that's more
Mhm.
money I'm going to have to owe. Well, what if it's actually going to help you grow your business so that you start making exponentially more money? So there's
Mhm.
certainly fear of, what if I can't pay the loan back, or what if I lose my house? I mean, I have been there before when I pivoted my business.
Mhm.
And like I said, I went through virtually my entire inheritance funding this because I decided to do that instead of get a loan.
Right.
But it was also a loan against, but what I took was a loan against all my investments.
Sure.
And finally I said,
Mhm.
okay, I got to pay this whole thing off. I got to sell enough to pay it off and then move forward, and then the money will start rolling in and yay. But
Mhm.
so that's, I'd say, is the biggest thing, is the fear of the unknown. Am I going to fail? What if I lose my house? And
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 some people would say if you even put that out there, what if I fail? You've already given yourself a reason to fail. Whereas some people
y-
just are like, there's no plan B. This is gonna work.
I will tell you, my broker said to me one day, "What's your plan B?" I said, "There isn't one.
Mhm.
This pivot's going
Yeah.
to work." And it
Yeah.
has. Took some time.
Mhm. And I
But
think you have to understand that it is going to take time. And I think people maybe aren't
mhm,
as realistic as they think. They think they're just going to get in there and they have the $1 million idea and it'll work. And, I think depending on what you're doing, you need to have time. I know for me, it was about 6 months before I really got
mhm,
some legs under,
mhm.
and again, I used my savings. I had an exit strategy. I said,
Yes.
okay, this is what I want to do. I didn't just
Yeah.
quit my job that day. I was like, I want to put money aside. I want to be
Mhm,
able to have that. I know some people like my son, who's, so cute at almost 21, he has a part-time job
mhm,
and he does that. So again, he can pay the bills, but then
mhm.
have most of his time to invest in growing his business. So I think again, you have to have a strategy behind it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's just, I don't know if and it's not with all women. I'm making a gross generalization here, but I think that so many of us, and it may just be because women tend to be nurturers more than men.
Mhm.
So please don't send me any hate mail here, please.
Yeah.
But I'm making a gross generalization. And, I can't tell you how many men I've spoken to in the past, and I've said, well, what about this? What about that? Oh no, my wife would kill me because we've got a kid getting ready for college and so on and so forth. And, they basically throw their wife under the bus.
Yeah.
And it may be a perfectly valid reason. I can't be an entrepreneur because of this. Our kids
Yeah.
going to college. What if I lose their
Mhm.
whole college fund? I don't know.
And the funny thing is I
What if
almost
you
feel like
don't?
I always feel like I have more job security being an entrepreneur than I did when I worked with a large company and had
Yeah.
a big salary because they could pack up tomorrow. They could fire you tomorrow. And it's like, again, I think it goes back to,
Yep.
you started off the conversation of, are you willing to invest in yourself? Would you bet on yourself? I'll bet on myself all day long because
I will too.
I know I'm tough. I know I'll figure
hmm
it out and
hmm
bring those things together. But again, what are you willing to do?
Yeah. And I will say, Clara, that one of the biggest misnomers, and I just had this conversation with someone yesterday, is that these large publicly traded companies are safer. And I heard that throughout my career, especially after the tech bust, as a professional headhunter for 30 years, is
Mm.
that, there was the boom, then there was the bust, and people are like, oh no, I think, these big companies are much safer. And I'd said, I don't know why you think that. Startups you have to choose the right startup. You have to look at the leadership team. Have they ever done this before? There are lots of components to it. But overall, and I think people are seeing it now more than ever, that, companies aren't loyal to you. I said this years ago to a guy I'd known for many years in the business. He was working for Informix. It was one of the three big database companies. They were acquired by IBM. And he had already made his annual number for the year at the acquisition. And as soon as IBM acquires them, they readjust his quota, which IBM is famous for doing because they manage your income. And he was now at 80% of his annual number after being over 100% of his annual number. I think it was like at 130%, if I recall. And he's like, oh, I've been so loyal to them in this. And I said, listen, Steve, companies are only loyal to you insofar as it suits their needs and interests.
Mhm.
Consequently, you should only be loyal to them insofar as it suits your needs and interests. Now, that doesn't mean you should be taking every call from every headhunter that calls you in perpetuity and going out on interviews, but it means you need to cover your own ass.
Yeah. For sure.
Because to your point, when the rubber meets the road, if this big company thinks, well, we're going to lay off, thousands of people because, our stock's not doing well and now it'll make our numbers look better. And, we'll be, Wall Street will reward us. They're not
Mhm.
going to think twice about getting rid of you. They're just
Yeah.
not.
I want to go back. We've been talking a lot about
Yeah.
the getting started, the starting your career as an entrepreneur, but this whole scarcity mindset, I don't think it stops there. I think sometimes we almost have more of that when we're in it after a couple years, when we have to get to the next level of our
Mhm.
business. Because I think, again, we've got things going and it's
Yeah.
the same fear. What if I invest more money and I lose it all? But I
Yeah.
see a lot more people I almost feel like people are more risky in the beginning because it's their dream. They're excited about it. They're doing those. But it's when they've been in the business maybe 5, 10 years and they are at that crossroads of we're either going to grow or we're not. That's where I feel like they're holding back on the investment. Have you experienced that?
No, that's actually interesting. I have not experienced that.
Right.
So I think I usually find it in the earlier stages of these
Mhm.
companies.
Yeah.
And, once they have money coming in, they're more, at least in my experience, they're more apt to, spend wisely. I just had a conversation with somebody yesterday, in fact, and they bootstrapped. They did a friends and family round early on.
Mhm.
And they are, and he said, we did not, we spent money where we needed to.
Yeah.
And now we have venture capitalists wanting to give us money. And he says, and I just don't think we're going to take it.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
I don't really want to give it 20% of my company, and we're growing the way we need to.
Yeah.
Great.
And I'm glad to hear you say that because I think, the message that I want people to hear is you're always going to have to invest. You're always going to have to grow
Mhm.
and you're going to do that. And
Mhm.
again, believe in the vision, do it, as you said, they spend their money, but they do it more wisely now. So
Right.
again, having that fortitude of doing the research to really look at it.
If you think of your company like a relationship, right? You can't just not invest in your relationship regularly,
Mhm.
or else your relationship will end up in divorce court.
Yes.
Right.
Very true.
So if you think of your company the same way, you have to invest in it, whatever that looks like for you, on a regular basis,
Really
because
good
that's
point.
what makes it healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so true. I really like that analogy. And I like the idea that you're bringing it back to that's what makes it healthy. I think that's great.
Mhm.
So let's unpack this a little bit. We've just talked about some things like getting a nest egg. We talked about being smart, but okay, I'm starting. Where should I start? What are some questions maybe an entrepreneur getting started out should ask themselves so that they can start investing wisely?
Yeah. So they should not be asking AI.
Okay, good.
Okay,
Talk
I'm
about
going to
that.
tell you that. I probably will get some hate mail about that as well. But the reality is, I cannot tell you the numbers of stories I have heard. In fact, I heard one on, I can't remember what podcast it was, where the guy said he had this idea. He just left his, job he'd been at for many years in his career, right? He's at that stage of his life. And the AI, very one of the well-known ones, ChatGPT, in fact, I believe it was, kept saying, oh, it's such a great idea. And you're so smart and, all this other, bullshit, basically. And of course, after he'd gone through this entire process, he realized the idea he had was actually just junk. Right.
Yeah.
So get yourself advisors, an advisor, mentor, somebody who knows, hire somebody who knows about the business that you're thinking about building. How did you come up with the idea? Some of the most successful ideas entrepreneurs come up with are that you have to be solving a problem people need to have solved. Okay. It's not about want. They need to have it solved. Like what's the outcome you're delivering to them?
Yeah.
Right. So that's really where you have to start. You've got to do, you've got to maybe have a beta offer, something to test with people that you're going to give it away to them and see how it works. Because, most companies fail, like 90%.
Yeah.
In fact, I just heard this morning in an interview that 90% of AI companies are failing. 90%. Wow. Well, I mean, think about it, Clara. You've got these mammoth companies, whether it's Google, OpenAI, Anthropic, Microsoft. You've got these mammoth companies who are getting zillions of dollars of investment. Smaller companies aren't getting those zillions of dollars. They may be getting some money, certainly, but it's you're grabbing after the shiny object and saying, is what I'm selling something people need?
Yeah, definitely.
Are they going to get an outcome that's actually going to give them an ROI for their business?
Yeah.
That's where people have to start, no matter what it is.
Yeah. And then I think, looking at, again, what we talk about, what should I invest in? What should I do on my own? I think, again, maybe going even and defining what is your role in your organization, so that you get clear on, these are the things I do. Oh, what are you good at? What brings you joy? Like for me, I love to write. Whereas a lot of people in my position, they delegate out a lot of those things. It brings me joy and I'm good at it. So I do it. But there's other things. So again, I think, looking at those things and then going back to what we talked about, if I do this activity, what is that taking away from? What time is that keeping me from doing the right things? So that you can really make sure that, again, you're investing your time as well as your dollars in the right area.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And it's also important to really look at the time you're spending on your business, right? I'm a real big believer in self-care, because you cannot take care of yourself. You're not going to be able to take care of your business.
Exactly.
So, for me, and it looks like we're going to get some rain. We're all kind of praying for rain here in Colorado, but, would be me, getting off this call at 4:30 and jumping in my truck and taking the dogs down to the ranch because I have a 3-year-old colt I need to get finished training to sell. Right. Could I stay at my desk for another hour and a half? Yep, I could. But, I've been up since 5:15 this morning and I need a break.
Yeah.
I need to get away from my desk and do something different. And I think that that's really, really important for entrepreneurs to consider what the ramifications of are just working 80 hours a week and not having any time to take care of yourself. You're not going to the gym. Maybe you're not eating right, whatever that is. Even if you have to get up a little bit earlier.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because I think the other myth that is out there is that for your first couple of years, it's got to be all or nothing. Yeah. And that's not a way to live too. And your business will suffer and your scalability will suffer if you're not taking purposeful breaks and feeding your soul and making sure you are well rested, because you just don't make quality decisions, and it will eventually start eroding away the forward movement.
Yep. I had a founder that I was working with, it's been about 3 years now, who was working between 80 to her point, 80 to 100 hours a week. And including on Sunday, she couldn't even get a day off. And, half that time was being spent managing her people. And I just thought, dude, this is no way to live.
Yeah.
And she knew better, but she just couldn't find her way out of it.
Yeah.
right? I mean, now she's out of it. She spends 10% of her time in the business, maybe.
Yeah.
She's, they transformed how they do things over there. And, she just could not grow the company financially because she was spending too much time doing erroneous activities she had no business doing.
Yeah. And I think that's what happens with most of us is, again, that time gets whittled away in the areas that are not the highest and best use for what we should be doing.
Right.
And that's why, I talk about write your own job description, and it shouldn't be everything. It's here's my role in the organization as the CEO, whatever it is your role is, and making sure that you are focusing on those activities and then, bringing in the other people. So I think that's great. So this has been fantastic. I would love to ask you, what is next for you, and what are some of the things you're working on right now to scale and take your life?
Really interesting things. I'm glad you asked. I got some really interesting things going on. So we are just launching a chief of staff ecosystem. So, I go in, I stay with the company as CEO for 3 to 6 months. You can call me a chief of organizational strategy or whatever, but I have this 9-step, organizational scaffold system I put in place, and I prepare them for a chief of staff, either fractional or full-time. So we are now just building a chief of staff ecosystem to bring either new chiefs of staff, people who want to be a chief of staff, experienced chief, because chiefs of staffs come at about 3 different levels, right? And that will look like 2 calls a month that are general support calls, mastermind kind of calls, and 2 training calls a month. Plus, each person will have one-on-one with me a month. So we've got that all built out, and we're launching that. So that's really pretty exciting. And what else? And I have built this amazing women's leadership program, and I have been so busy. I just, it's up on the website. We need to really start marketing it.
I love it. Well, whatever we can do to help you get that out there, let us know. We'll put all of your information in the show notes so people can go and check it out. So I have one final question for you before we let you go today. And that is, sitting where you sit today, how do you define success for yourself?
That's a great question. I really define success. I'm motivated by the opportunity to make a difference. And if I'm able to make a difference for a CEO, that makes me financially successful.
Yeah. I love
so that. It's not just about the money, because the money comes if you put the other structures in place.
Absolutely.
I consider it success when I can, like I said, when I can get myself out of the office at 4 or 4:30 in the afternoon and go out and play with some of my horses.
Fantastic. Well, I hope you have more fun doing that. And I'm excited to watch this new program. I think it's going to be really valuable for so many. So, Carol, thank you so much for sharing time with us today and for talking with us a little bit about scaling our businesses and investing in ourselves.
It was a pleasure to be with you, Clara. Thanks.